The first time I traveled to Turkey, I hitchhiked there, and I crossed across 3 international border checkpoints with no visa. After a month, I left to the Isle of Lesbos. The Turkish border guard was baffled by the fact that I was an illegal immigrant there. However, he smiled and he winked and he told me to quietly go on my way. My passport and my skin color has given me passage across 3 international borders under similar circumstances. However, millions of people across the world face far, far different realities than this. In fact, today the world is more riddled with highly securitized borders at any point in human history. And in the face of this, there's more people on the move than ever before. Today, there are 244 million migrants in the world and 60 million refugees. What I would like to talk about today is the fact that this number is not going to decrease, and in fact, it's set to escalate, regardless of different political situations, such as what's going on in Syria. And if we let people into our lands or not, is no longer simply going to be a question of altruism, or even a question of humanitarianism, but soon possibly going to be a question of the survival of whole populations. But first, let's get an understanding of what border security looks like in the world today. Today, there are around 65 highly securitized borders in the world. The number in the last 15 years alone tripled. There's highly securitized borders on every inhabited continent on this planet, with clusters emerging around about North Africa, around about Europe, around about Central Asia and South Asia in particular. So this belief in the need for border security is really quickly becoming a globally sung mantra. But how does this tie into our human experience on the planet? Well, history tells us we come from a very, very different kind of narrative. In fact, human history is one built on migration. When we first left Africa 60,000 years ago, a small group of us walked out in search of better lands. Then we traveled for tens of millennia to settle the corner of the world that we have today. And where there was the greatest human traffics, the greatest civilizations arose, such as the Near Ancient East, the China, the Indian subcontinent, the Americas, all had huge influxes of people coming in and out, bringing with them new goods, new ideas, new tools, new skills. So this is a very different narrative that we've come into today. And the narrative is quickly being rewritten in front of us, particularly in the last few years. The migrant is quickly being construed as the great threat that we face. And border security is being offered as the cure for us. This is a development that's really developed in the West in particular, really escalated in the last 15 years. However, border security, or incidents of border security, are quickly spreading across the globe. So this is such as Libya, who recently brought a 300 million euro security deal to securitize all of its borders. Or there's a border fence that's heavily guarded that runs the entirety of Bangladesh's borders. To Brazil, who recently bought a deal that's going to run 10,000 miles, covering the extent of all of its borders. And to get an understanding, what does border technology actually mean on the ground? Well, it covers a range of technologies, and these span from concrete walls to barbed wire fences, to electric fences, to fences lined with landmines, such as the Moroccan Western Sahara border, to satellite surveillance, to drones. And then you also have robots that are mounted with guns that have heat and motion sensors to detect what is a human. We have these in use at the North-South Korean border. We are told border security is for our own protection. It is to look after us. However, research shows, such as a university carried out at the University at Warwick recently, that there's very few links between migration and increasing terrorism. Furthermore, there was a report released last year by the World Bank and the UN's International Labour Organization that show that migrants are not a burden on the economy, as we all expect, and they give more in taxes and social contributions than they take in terms of benefits. But what we do know is that border security is never simply a clean and bureaucratic security measure. It's always a thing that brings violence. It's a thing that brings hardship, denial of opportunities, human rights abuse, and way too frequently, death. I work with refugees making the crossing from Turkey to Europe, particularly helping refugees get safe, decent life jackets. I have spoken with people who have seen their children killed in front of them. I have spoken with people who've had family members decapitated by Daesh, by ISIS. I've spoken to children, 12, 13, 14 years old, traveling alone, who have lost everything, who have lost everyone. I've also spent time on the Turkish side with refugees hiding in the mountains, waiting for the people smuggler to call them to take them across to Europe. Many of them have never seen the sea before. Most of them can't even swim. And as they clutch onto their fake life jackets, the all-consuming fear that they might not make it that night is a mixture of sadness and absolute petrifyingness. That's a dead weight in their eyes that I've never seen before. Last year, in the year 2015, almost 4,000 people died trying to make the crossing. However, similar atrocities are playing out across the globe, such as the 2,000 migrant corpses that were found in the US and Mexican desert in the last 10 years, or the 10,000 people shot by border guards at the Indian-Bangladeshi border since the year 2000, to the thousands of migrants that are rounded up in trucks in Libya and Morocco and taken and dumped in the desert on an annual basis. Border security is a universal class system, a ranking system of worthiness of who we think is good enough to let into our lands. And the irony, or the blatant intention, is that it's the most vulnerable people, or the people who need it the most, who are generally denied this basic freedom of movement. And because of the second-hand citizenship that migrants generally hold, we only see this when it affects us. However, it's already becoming unbearable for many people across the globe. And the rate that the border industry is growing, the situation is going to get far, far more dire. However, overshadowing all of this, there's one great and beastly elephant in the room, and that is climate change. We've already started to tumble down the abyss that is climate change. How far we go remains deeply unsure. But what we do know is that great changes are already happening, and that far more extreme changes are still to come. In the last 30 years, floods, droughts, and storms tripled, deeply affecting millions of communities across the globe. Climate migration and even climate wars can already be seen, such as with Syria. Many experts believe that the initial uprising that triggered the war was in reaction to unprecedented droughts there. And in Syria, already 300,000 people have been killed and 9 million people displaced. Now, the world's climate has always fluctuated, of course, and people have always had to move in response. When we first left Africa, they think it was because of climatic reasons. And human migration has been traced with every great change in ice age and every great climatic shift. And in the modern world, of course, adaptation to climate change is a hot topic. However, we cannot look after humanity under normal conditions. We'd be foolishly naive to believe that we can do it under climate change. And one very crucial thing that very few people are aware of or is not spoken about is that man-made climate change today is happening at a rate 10 times faster than normal climate change happens at. How many people will have to move because of climate change? This is a greatly disputed issue, and it's really hard to pinpoint because there's so many complex things that play into this. However, figures range between 25 million and 1 billion. So this scenario of border fortification in a warming world is highly toxic. And it's not hard to imagine in some areas you will start to get trapped populations, people trapped in environmentally hostile areas or in transit countries. And it happens to be that many instances of border security are starting to emerge to collide with areas that are predicted to be climate hotspots, such as in North Africa, the Middle East, even round about Europe, Central Asia, down to South Asia. And if we let this emerge, if we let this take place, what will be the result? New human rights abuses in epic global proportions, masses of people trapped in areas that are rife with drought, famine, and war spurred by scarcities. Potentially the dying out of some people who are not able to leave. We're already facing a very different world this century. We'd be very foolish to believe that this is not going to challenge the very core of modern civilization. We cannot deny any longer the need to completely remodel our societies if we want to avert full-scale catastrophes. And it must not be forgotten, it is the West that's largely responsible for these emissions, so we must pioneer change to ease these global impacts. In extreme times, extreme measures must be adopted, and damaging, unuseful, old habits discarded. And with this, we must begin to reverse the agenda on border security. And this doesn't necessarily mean eradicating borders or even eradicating border checks necessarily. But where you come from and the size of your wallet should not be your ticket to pass a border. Furthermore, the billions that are spent every year on border security, and it's estimated to be around $30 billion, as estimated by Frost & Sullivan, a consultancy company. These billions could be spent on helping refugees integrate and helping them contribute to their host communities. The world we face already is going to be very different in the coming century and beyond. Let's not make it one where masses are trapped in environmentally hostile and socially devastated areas. But let's be compassionate and let's be intelligent today about it. Let's rewrite our future discourse and let's create a world where we support each other, letting those that need it, and create healthy, diverse, powerful societies in this new unprecedented era that we face. And with that, I want you to all to grab onto this idea, and I want you to discuss it and share it with everyone, to take it to your grassroots groups, take it to your academic circles, because it's essential that we start raising awareness today of the perils of border security in a warming world, and that we begin to renormalize the idea of free movement. Thank you.